Success is the ability to move from one failure to another without loss of enthusiasm. It's a quote often attributed to Winston Churchill and sometimes Abraham Lincoln, but in reality no one's really sure of its origin. I think about it a lot though. I don't know if you have certain phrases or idioms that you like to keep hold of in your life, but that's definitely one of mine. And the reason is simple. I love projects. I've completed a lot of them in my adult life and started even more, and even though each one begins with the thinking that it will be the thing that will allow me to quit my job and become a full-time creative, not one of them has ever made me any real money. In my first devlog, I referred to myself as a bit of a jack of all, master of none. And that's kind of true. And now that we're meaningfully underway with both my point and click game and this devlog, I thought I'd be a bit self-involved and take a wander back through all my old projects, both so you can see where my relevant experience lies, and because I find these kinds of videos interesting to watch myself. So in the interest of laying my cards on the table, here's every project, scheme and creative endeavour I've dabbled with outside of my 9 to 5 over the past 10 years or so. In 2009 I finished work on a novel called The Death of Alan Bell, which was about a guy who finds out he has a year to live but opts not to tell anyone, and then during that time develops a doomed romance with a girl that he lives with. I worked on it for a good few years, labouring under the impression at the time that it would be a springboard into fame and fortune, and that it was this great literary classic in the making. In actuality, I was 21 years old and it wasn't very good. Still, I sent it off to a bunch of literary agents, it got rejected, and then I self-published it through Amazon, a decision I've been trying to reverse ever since. For reasons that probably relate to vanity and attempts at profundity, in 2010 I wrote this long monologue poem about a guy talking to his newborn baby, and then filmed a friend of mine acting it out. I learned a lot during this time about how not to light a set, how not to film something, and how not to record audio. I thought the poem was quite nice, but the video is now unlisted on my channel because I don't want to look at it. In around 2010, my then housemate and I hit upon an idea for an iOS app that would quickly and easily let people share their location to other friends, no matter what phone they had. So the idea here was that the app would drop a pin on the map and then preload a text message that you could fire off to a friend with a link to Google Map coordinates. My housemate is a developer and was able to make the app while I fulfilled a sort of creative director role. Anyway, we got it made, got some coverage and had a few hundred or so downloads. This was back in the days when you could reasonably charge people for apps too, so we had it up for 59p. But then shortly afterwards Apple launched Find My Friends and effectively killed our business model. My housemate and I weren't done with apps though. Along with a third friend, we came together in 2012 to create a tool for journalists, which is what I was at the time, to help them record interviews and easily tag important parts for future reference. Interviewee was the result, and it did that one task pretty well. My role again here was sort of as a creative director, sharing the design work. Our model with Interviewee was to give the base app away for free and then charge something like £1.49 for a few extra features which I now can't remember the nature of. Eventually though, we wanted to plug in an auto transcription API for a monthly fee so the app would transcribe interviews for you. That never happened for a couple of reasons, not least of which was one of the other guys moved to New York. And eventually the demands of keeping the app up to date and reliable kind of scared us off continuing. I think we hit about 25,000 downloads before pulling it from the App Store. At the same time as Interviewee was in development, me and those two other guys were running a series of meetups for creatives in London called the Lonely Arts Club. The pitch was that if you had a project idea but wanted to find a creative partner with a complementary skill, you could come and meet them at one of our events. It was fun but short-lived, and never failed to introduce us to a strange mix of quite odd people. My second novel, A Box Full of Cats, was about a couple living through the days before the end of the world, but at 4 different stages of their relationship. It's no masterpiece, but I thought it was a step in the right direction from the first. Again, I submitted it to agents in 2015 and was roundly rejected. But I did get a few requests for the manuscript, a couple of them mulled it over, and I got some encouraging good but not for us kind of feedback. Again, hubris and vanity convinced me to self-publish, but nobody's really read it. If you're so inclined, you can actually read it for free on Wattpad.com, where I've got it up under a pseudonym and a more romancy title for reasons I don't quite remember. When I got married in 2017, I thought it might be fun to draw a little caricature of all the guests to use as their place settings. We had 100 guests, so this was no mean feat, but it went down well enough that people kept saying I should do it as a business. So I do. I run a little Etsy shop where I offer to draw individual cards for people's entire wedding parties. It is prohibitively expensive on purpose, which means I only get 1 or 2 clients a year, but it's a lot of effort, so that's how I like it. I'm not sure what I was thinking here, but in around 2017 I set about drawing the top 250 movies on IMDb as cats. I got 50 done. Cat the Movies was the resulting Instagram page and merchandise store. The Instagram account has a whopping 27 followers, and I think I sold 2 t-shirts on redbubble.com. I've already covered this in my last video, but in 2017 a friend and I began work on a point-and-click adventure on Visionaire Studio, which saw me attempt to teach myself animation on Adobe Animate. The rough idea was going to be about a guy who'd jump into old photographs around his house and relive old memories to find a way to get his girlfriend back. I can't speak for my friend on this, but I think the game's dormant rather than dead. Either way, we spent a couple of months on it before life and other things inevitably got in the way. That same friend and I also started a YouTube channel later that year, but about movies. Our series Red Wine made it to about 6 or 7 episodes, in which we'd sit at his dining table and drink a couple of bottles of wine while discussing whatever movie was out that week. I think we enjoyed making these a lot more than people enjoyed watching them. We never got more than about 200 views on any one video, and only a handful of subscribers. And I think that's probably because I'm not entirely sure what our USP was on reflection. Perhaps we could have built an audience over a longer period of time, but I guess we'll never know. Over the course of 2017 and 2018, I wrote, directed and produced a narrative audio drama podcast called Unresolved. That's un/resolved. Clever. Unresolved was inspired by and made for fans of true crime investigations like Serial, as well as mysteries and audiobooks. It's a 12 episode series where the first 6 episodes play out like a Serial style murder investigation podcast, and the second 6 take the form of an audiobook that fills in the gaps in the story. It's got a full voice cast of some 18 characters that I pulled together from some actor friends and some strangers from Mandy.com, and I even tinkled on the piano keys to make the music. This is probably the project I'm most proud of on this whole list. I learned a lot about audio production along the way, and the show's had a modicum of success to boot. It's garnered nearly 70,000 downloads, it charted in the top 50 of the UK podcast charts, it's earned a 4.5 star overall iTunes rating, and it even appeared in a story on the App Store about the show's production process. I've also had some really lovely feedback on it from the people in the audio drama subreddit over the years. Depending on where you are in the world, Unresolved plays ads halfway through each episode, but let's just say it's not exactly been fruitful given that it cost me about £2,500 in actor fees to make. Again, I've covered this one already briefly, but suffice it to say that what you're seeing right now is pretty much the extent of what I learned in Game Maker Studio, and since I made this in 2018, I think I've forgotten it all. Born out of a love of London, puzzles and going to pubs, my wife and I spent a good dollop of time in 2019 making boxed hunts, a series of print yourself treasure hunts around London. She did the logistics and the puzzles while I designed the decks and edited the copy, and they're still on sale now at boxedhunts.com. We think they're quite good, but what with the world being on a coronavirus lockdown right now, they're not exactly flying off the shelves. I think we've sold about 15 sets so far, which isn't bad going considering we've not had masses in the way of advertising. Consider this an ongoing one. All of which brings us to today and leads us on to my new point and click game, tentatively titled The Biggleboss Incident. Now, pretty much every piece of advice I've ever seen about game development says you should start small, get something simple made and work up from there, but I'm not doing that. Not because I think I'm smarter than the people giving that sage advice or anything, but because 1, I've finished and not finished enough projects to know my own limits by now, and 2, because I'm at a point in my life where I want my next project to take me a number of years and be something special. I'm diving in with both feet, and that may be naive, but I find setting out to make something like the games I loved so much growing up much more inspiring than setting out to make something bite-sized. I guess time will tell on how wrong I am there. And then there's this channel, and I guess all of the above experience and reasoning is why these videos exist. If I feel an obligation to keep posting videos, I'll have an obligation to keep working on the game. And if I keep working on the game, I'll have an inclination to update this devlog. I'm kind of hoping that the two will feed each other and keep the whole project trundling on. So, fingers crossed how that works out. So that's me and my eclectic project CV over the last decade or so. And what's interesting about it all, having spent the time to list out and think about every one of them, is that even though I've spent all that time and effort and come out the other end no better off financially, I don't consider any of it wasted time. I've learned so much from each of them, both in terms of skills and about myself, that I see them all as valuable experience, even if some of them were literal failures. And now, with this new mammoth project underway in the shape of a point-and-click adventure game, more than ever I'm reminded of that often misattributed saying that success is the ability to move from one failure to another without loss of enthusiasm. So listen, thanks for watching this very self-indulgent devlog episode, guys. I hope there were some nuggets of useful advice in there somewhere, or at the very least I hope you found it entertaining. Next time we'll be back on track with usual point and click projecting, I promise. So in the meantime, look after yourselves, good luck with your projects, and I will see you next time. Bye.